Don't quit. Don't quit. Honestly, like you can't, for me, you can't fail if you don't quit. And
Yeah.
I've been trying to do this for 14 years and I'm
Yeah,
just
same.
now, yeah, and same with Courtney, and I'm just now at the point where like I could confidently when someone says like what do you do for a living? I won't be like, "Oh, I work at here or whatever, but I'm also a musician." I just tell people I'm a musician now.
Hi, this is Blautus, and this video is about Spiritbox, which is currently my favorite band. When I was younger, the band I Wrestled a Bear Once got me into metal, and I was just blown away at how random and epic and just crazy the sounds they could make, and the things they were doing. And then when they broke up, I was really, really upset because they were my favorite band, and I listened to them all the time. And then Spiritbox was formed with two of the previous members from I Wrestled a Bear Once, and I listened to their first album. I was like, okay, there's something here. And then over that course of time, I've seen them grow into one of the most popular metal bands that's out, and I see a bunch of videos about them, and it blows me away that I've been following them for so long. I've been into them for so long. So here's some videos with band members and some of the inspiration that drives them.
I was one of those kids that I was always on. Like I was always performing in my own head. I was just, my whole day just was me creating my own little movies and like skits and plays and performances. Like when I a lot of kids are like this, but if I was watching The Little Mermaid, I wasn't watching it. I was like in the movie. Like I was acting out I would be each little character and sing the whole movie. I was probably very annoying to be around, but I'm very uh, thankful that my parents didn't just tell me to shut up. They just let me be weird. They let me be a weird little theater kid. And then I kind of I always liked singing and performing and acting and stuff, but all that stuff kind of took a back seat as I became a teenager. I started to lose interest in a lot of stuff, and just through being depressed and going through a lot of stuff that most nothing crazy, just stuff that most kids go through, and and then I just started focusing more on like the paint by the numbers, like, okay, I want to get in a good college, therefore I must do this sport and I must be a part of this committee and I must be a part of this and that. And I got very like every activity I did was a strategy. It wasn't just because it was something I loved. Um, for me to get a scholarship, essentially.
Right.
And then so I still did, so I still did like theater, but I only would try out if I knew I'd get the part.
Playing
Like
it
I
safe,
was,
playing it safe all
I
the
was playing
way.
it really safe, and um, I suddenly moved to Canada when I from the States when I was 15. My mom and dad divorced, and my mom married a guy that lived up here, so we all moved here with him, and that was like so that kind of like restarted my life because it made me, I went from like being the big fish in the small pond in my high school to coming to a school that had 1,500 kids in it in my class, and I realized that how none of that stuff mattered. It didn't matter if I was the most popular person or the smartest. The school was so big that I wasn't the best at anything, and I realized that that was okay. There was always someone funnier than me in improv class, and there was always someone prettier than me, and there's always someone smarter than me, and it was okay. And it made me realize that all those things that I thought I wanted, I didn't want. And then I just started, privately trying to make music. Nothing that I would ever even conceive of showing anyone. And then me and my little brother started a band, and just locally, but we had dreams of making it to the big times. And here I am. I kind of just stumbled into heavy music because my brother and I just we kept being more and more influenced by heavy music. And then that's how I met my husband, and locally, like we were in the same types of bands. And then we joined Iwabo together and made Spiritbox together. So it's been like 15 years of trying to figure out my life.
That's crazy. It's not always a straight shot.
And yeah, it was just finding the right people and connecting and trying to figure it all out, which is such a cool time, reflecting back on it, because you don't know what you're doing, you have no idea. And which led me to playing my first show March of 2008. So when I was in high school, it was actually really quick. I met the guys that ended up being in the first version of my first band. And within 2 weeks, we were booking a tour, and we played our first show with a handful of songs that we could barely get through. And then, like a couple months later, I went on my first tour. And that led me to taking a bunch of time off during high school, touring in a van across Canada and sleeping in Walmart parking lots and crashing on hardwood floors of our friends' apartments and stuff. And I did that for a long time, a very long time. So this whole playing shows and touring and stuff has just been the only thing I've known. And yeah, it all started in 2008.
Michael has had like 30 jobs
I have.
because he just I always knew him as like the kid that would have a job at like the grocery store, and then he would just have to quit every time he went on tour. They wouldn't let him go. They'd be like, you can't just take 3 weeks off work, and he'd be like, I guess I quit.
I kind of lucked out because the vocalist, especially of my band, was very business minded and was very driven, and he had a van, so it was a no brainer. And also, he was a local promoter, so he understood the MySpace days of reaching out. You would book tours and shows with randoms on MySpace and just show up. So we would show up to Saskatoon or somewhere in Manitoba and just hope that the promoter was there and that there was a flyer. And it was pre-Facebook, so there wasn't a Facebook event or anything like that. So you would drive for 15-20 hours or whatever to play in Altona, Manitoba, right? Altona, in a portable or a fire hall, and just hope that you could get your gas money and that you could sell a couple shirts and that more than 10 people would show up. And looking back at that, that's insane. That's absolutely nuts that my parents let me do it.
And so when you guys formed Spiritbox, what was the vision? And what did you want to do differently from the bands that you had been in previously?
It's a great question, actually. We really wanted to just do what we wanted with no compromise. At least attempt to the best of our ability. Leaving Iwabo abruptly while on tour was something that was very complex and really hard to. It was a hard pill to swallow.
Well, that makes it sound like we just left the tour.
Well,
No, we put in our 2 weeks notice.
we put in our 2 weeks notice on the last
whole
tour that
band.
we did. The whole band did, because we were just like, this can't continue like this, and everybody agreed. And so coming home, we came home to living in my parents' basement and having to get jobs and trying to move out and actually start our lives and get married and all that, and essentially start from square one. And it felt like, not like, I don't want to say rock bottom because that's very dramatic, but when you go from doing something that you love and having a routine and actually, Iwabo wasn't the biggest band on the planet, but we were playing shows and we were able to tour. And so you get very used to that now abruptly being removed and you're nobody, so to speak, again, and you have to start from square one. It's a very scary feeling. So essentially, we sat down, me and Courtney, and we're like, if we're going to do this, we have to make music that it's for us. It has to be mixed correctly. The art has to have a lot of thought behind it. It has to all be intentional. There can't be we'll just figure it out in post type thing. And so we worked really hard, and I wrote that first EP over the course of about 8 months. And then I was just like, pretty much I exhausted all creativity, and I was like, this is it. It's going to be these songs, and we're just going to do our best to get it, as good production as possible, the best type of mix, to the point where after we got married, we actually used all of the money that we got from our wedding on the mix of the record.
Well, we just asked for money only.
We just asked for money only.
And didn't really ask for like
A registry or anything?
Yeah, like a registry.
No, yeah. And so that's and actually, to go back to my first band, the last record I ever did with my first band was with Dan Bronstein, who produces our music. And so I hit him up. This is 2017, after we had everything ready to go and recorded. And I asked him if he would mix it, and he was on board. So yeah, we just did that, and then we mentally were like, okay, we need to have strong visuals. We need to market this. Essentially, we need to try to create a demand, because this is the only way that we're going to be able to get back to doing what we do best. And it was a really, really tough go. It was a really hard go at the beginning, because we had to basically do everything ourselves. We had to make the videos, we had to make the artwork, we had to commit everything we had to it with basically no budget. So we had to get very creative. But the reward of it was so huge, because even at the time, because it just felt so satisfying and fulfilling to finally have it out and to have this clear vision of what we wanted. And we started noticing that, it wasn't like an immediate jump. It wasn't like an immediate, oh, overnight we're huge or whatever. But the people that really liked it really liked it. And that was a great sign for us, because it gave us a sense of hope, and it gave us a sense of like, well, maybe 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road, we could be doing this, maybe not full time, but we could be doing it and people would care about it. And that was the driving force behind it, was just a genuine desire to make a project that we were extremely proud of, and that it was music that pushed our limit, and also, hopefully that people enjoyed.
But then I think that we've always felt, and I think a lot of artists feel this way, that it's like now the transition of power has happened, and it's no longer our songs, it's now listeners, it's their songs. And now it's kind of like, whenever that happens, then I give myself permission to move on. It's like I carried the baby to birth, and now it's yours. And I'm trying to conceive again. You know what I'm saying?
And I also felt like your performance was sort of inspired by artists maybe like outside of the rock and metal world. Are there any like sort of artists you look to for influences in terms of your like live performance?
My answer is so typical of me. Just everything anyone ever asks me, I'm sorry, but the answer is always Beyonce. Beyonce is my favorite artist. But in general, just getting to watch anyone who plays to a large amount of people, I try to study that, because I'm just used to playing shows in a club or in a festival situation where there's jumbotrons. And when you're playing, a venue like the Roundhouse, you're not in either. It's bigger than a club, so people can't see you from far away, but it's not big enough where there's like video screens so they can see your small movements. So I really try, every time I get to play with like a big artist that, and I get to watch them from the back of house or on the side, I try to see like, how can they make movements that are impactful, but that are efficient, that aren't wasting energy. But my lazy answer is just, it's Beyonce. No matter what, like, we're gonna have our love of metal music be like imprinted on those songs. But I think that it's just, instead of just trying to write for a subgenre, I think that's just far too stressful for, I think a lot of people like that's like, feels like, cozy for them. But I think for Michael and I, that's stressful. Like, we're just writing music that we like, and sometimes it's gonna be heavy sounding, like feeling, and then sometimes it's gonna be really beautiful and light feeling, and maybe the lyrics are just a little bit heavy. But I just find that to be so much more freeing. And when I'm writing, I like to, like, if I have spur of the moment, some inspiration, I don't know what it is, but like certain things I can write down on notes on my phone or on my computer, but like I have to have a notebook. I have to write it out on a notebook. It's probably because I'm old. Because normally when I write a song, it takes me a really long time. Like I'll get the melody right away, but
I don't know what it is. I think it's just because I usually have a lot of time in between releases. I really have a long time before I commit to like the actual lyrics, or I really commit to a part. No musician truly is that insecure, like deep down. It's like you have the insecurity, but then down under it is like the compulsive, like you feel like you have to share your art with the world. So it's like I'm trying not to be like that, because if I really felt that way, I wouldn't be putting my music out. And for others, I would just keep it private to myself. So clearly, I am delusional enough to think that like someone would like it.
I think he's always going to be, no matter what we do, I think he's always going to be chasing that balance of like heaviness and he uses this as in a positive way, like something catchy. I think a lot of us kind of like shy away from using. I don't like using that word, like being like, oh, it's catchy. I think we've all like trained ourselves to be like mainstream is bad, but Michael, when he says something's catchy, he means he's obsessed with it and it's stuck in his head.
Yeah, I mean, it used to be I was very fixated on trying to fit in as many notes as possible and really try to like, each passage had to be very like impressive, so to speak, and I cared so much about that. And then it took like, us putting out Holy Roller, which essentially is like a 6-note song, for me to realize that like, we put that song out and the same night there's all these kids playing it, and I was like, oh, like maybe there's something to being able to like be a little simpler and catchier and have some hooks here and there. So from then on it was basically just like, well, like I enjoy this better personally, and I enjoy writing these types of songs, and why not just try to focus on being catchier? Why not try to focus on being more memorable? So it's been a huge learning curve over the past few years, and from Eternal Blue to the new stuff and everything we're working on now, it's just very much focused on like, does this get stuck in my head? If the answer is yes, we'll go for it. It doesn't matter what the type of music it is. If the answer is no, we put it on a hard drive, and it stays on a hard drive for eternity.
I feel like in these songs, I'm not a guitar player, so I can't like express this properly, but it's like, to me, it feels more, Michael plays a lot of like genty stuff, when he chokes up. So it's like the guitar's really riffy and bouncy, like jun, jun, and that's the way he has played a lot. But on these songs, I feel like he's really letting things ring out, and like it feels like it's the song's like breathing and floating more. It's like more like the atmosphere is very it's just giving me those early 2000s, late 90s like alternative rock dark vibes, like Smashing Pumpkins, Garbage, Nine Inch Nails. Like I think those are just some really timeless sounding records. And
absolutely.
And I think Michael is very very inspired by that, as well as bands like Tears for Fears and Depeche Mode. And there's like this gothy darkness to all those songs, and I think it just makes for a very different it makes for a very, very different guitar approach. And then that always like forces me to approach the vocal a little bit differently to kind of balance out the guitar. So I think anytime he changes up his guitar technique in any way, it always kind of throws me for a loop, and I kind of am reacting to that.
We don't take any of this for granted, so because it so easily can be taken away, because we're so new. There's so much more to prove still. Like,
Still have a long way to
you can
go.
have one good tour, one good album, but maybe that's all you ever do. So I think it's like in a good way, not like in like a we can't celebrate way. Like I think we just know how quickly we could go back to doing something we don't like doing.
Sure.
Don't quit. Don't quit. Honestly, like you can't. For me, you can't fail if you don't quit. And
Yeah.
I've been trying to do this for 14 years, and I'm
Yeah,
just
same.
now. Yeah, and same with Courtney. And I'm just now at the point where like I could confidently, when someone says like, "What do you do for a living?" I won't be like, "Oh, I work at here or whatever," but I'm also a musician. I just tell people I'm a musician now, which is great, and it's the ultimate goal. But it's just one of those things where you have to just give it your all, and you can't let like the voices in your head being like, this isn't working, what are you doing? Your friends are becoming doctors and lawyers, you know what I mean? Like you're in your basement writing an album. You just have to you have to push through, and eventually it's just going to pay off. And yeah, just keep going.
My advice is less optimistic. It's more like
you have
Realistic.
to have balance, I suppose. You have to have the good and the bad, the good cop, bad cop.
yeah, like I just think that people that are starting out making music, and they have something that they feel is special, it's like you have to walk a line always behind like a healthy dose of being completely delusional.
Yeah.
And then but also have a bit of self-awareness. They're both very important. You need the delusion part to get through some tough times to keep going. But then you also need the self-awareness to be able to never be caught in like the sunken cost fallacy of like, oh, I put so much time into X, so I can't stop. You know, whether it's like a relationship with someone, oh, we've been together a long time, or a job, I've been at this job for a long time. I feel like it's the same thing with music. So I think it's very important for people to really assess when they like to really look and assess how much time and effort they're actually spending on their music, and try to be realistic with themselves and self-aware. Like, could I be spending more of my time and resources on what I'm doing if I'm putting the rest of my life on hold for my music? And then also, I think the most important thing is just to not, as people that live on an island, you cannot, if you want to be successful, really, you can't let geography limit who you work with, and who is making music with you, and who is on your team. Because if we did that, we wouldn't have a band still. You know, it would just be Michael and I. And I think that a lot of people really get into the trap of trying to be the most successful local band. And I think that is great if that's your goal, but that's probably not going to, you know, most people's dreams are to go past that and become a, you know, a international band. So I think that people need to just, you know, work with people that they like in whatever capacity that is. You know, maybe you can't afford to fly someone out to direct your video, but you know, maybe you can figure a way to send footage to them that you shoot yourself. Or maybe you can't work with this mixing engineer and fully go into their studio, but maybe they can mix one song and you send them the stems. So just little things like that. I think that's like a really, really big thing.